Morning, everybody. Did you guys miss me? Yeah, you're liars. I know you are. It's good to be with you again this morning. If you don't know me, my name is Jeremy, one of the pastors here. I primarily work with our students and our creative team. Excited to share God's Word with you this morning, whether you're in person or online. We're thrilled. And this morning, I wanted to start out maybe a little different than we normally do, because we're going to take a trip down memory lane. I asked earlier this week, I reached out to a bunch of our staff and leadership teams, and I asked for baby pictures. And I reached out to everyone, because normally people don't just give those up, right? They're like, no, I hold those close to the vest. Nobody sees those, but I got a lot of them, so you guys get to see them, okay? I'm going to show you, and we're going to take kind of guesses. You don't need to shout it out. You can if you want. It can be interactive. Going to show you some pictures and see if you guys can guess which staff, deacon, pastor advisory team person this is. And if you don't know any of those people, just to get to see some people when they were young. It's kind of fun. Okay, so first one is this here. Now, some of the pictures are better than this, okay? This one's a little blurry, but we're looking at this young little one right here, young woman. And if you know her kids, you might recognize her. But this is Ashley Berry, one of our staff members, with her sisters and brother. Well, you can't see him; he's over there. But this is Ashley Berry, cute little thing. And if you know Rylan, they all sound the same. Landon, her son, it kind of looks like Landon if you get really close to it. So, but yes, this is Ashley when she was just a little baby. This little guy, one of our deacons. I've never seen him smile like this in my life. This is Isaac Grayson. Cute little guy. And you can see it, again, a lot of these you get up close and you know the person and you can see it. It's adorable. We have several. We're going to fly through them. This is also one of our deacons here at News Story. This, any guesses? That's Kathy Connor. Yeah, it's cute. It's adorable. How about this one here? Okay, this one may be pretty obvious. Who is it? Yeah, it's Dennis, one of our other pastors, sitting here doing this little thing. That's Dennis. If you don't know him, the picture pretty much gives it away. Like, that's old. Like, we had to be carefully hold the photo and everything. No. And if you didn't know, Dennis is a twin. Maybe you saw last week. Maybe you learned that as you saw two Dennises walking around. You're like, I don't think I had a drink before church, but now I'm wondering because I'm seeing double. So it's Dennis. Also, next, okay, this is a young lady on our staff. She grew up in South Africa. This is Jen Dickinson. You guys may not know that. She was a missionary kid, pastor's kid in South Africa before she moved here, and so this is her there. And she heads up our Kid Story ministry. She's our Kid Story director, if you don't know her. That's Jen. Let's see, who else do we have? Okay, this one's obvious if you know the person. Little boy by the name of Josh Van Zyl. Those ears he grew into his ears, we'll say that, but he did not grow into his hairline. I didn't pass these jokes by him beforehand, but he's self-deprecating. It's okay, right? This one is the most obvious one of the bunch, in my opinion. And if you know her daughter, carbon copy. That's Jen Grayson. If you know Isla, it's carbon copy. Kind of scary. Identical daughter. Let's see, a couple more here. This one, a little bit harder because babies, they all look kind of the same. This is one of our deacons, Becky Nickel, with the bonnet's a little much. Your parents are extra. Or did you grow up on the prairie? I don't know what it's about. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, this one's really obvious. That's Josh Nickel. He looks the same. Still smiles the same. This is Josh Nickel, one of our deacons as well. This one, super obvious. You just saw her. That's baby Kristen. I like the pigtails and the dining table doily over your neck here. I think just a couple more. Yes. Okay. This one's obvious. One of our pastoral advisory team. The Sean Connor. He looks the exact same. That colic is intense, by the way. There's not a gel on the planet that could stop that thing. So good thing you got rid of that. That's Sean. This one, he works with our students. He's actually in the tech booth right now. Apparently you don't get to find out who it is. That's Joel Ulrich. I'm so sorry. I thought I had the other slide in there. Apparently I don't. That's Joel Ulrich. You probably know him, one of our staff as well with our tech. And then I got one more here for you. The little boy right there. Any guesses on who that is? That is yours truly. That is me and my sister, proof that I've always had a big head. Okay. Now these are kind of fun. I like looking at childhood pictures. I got a ton more, so if you want any like blackmail, let me know. I can shoot them your way. But I'm confident that as you look at these photos, any of the adults and kids we just saw, you could ask every one of them, every one of the adults that were shown here, you could ask them that like they are where they are who they are today because someone showed up for them in their life at some point. Someone showed up for them, a parent, a trusted adult, an upperclassman, a friend, a family member, I don't know what it may be. They showed up for them here so they could become this person here. And I'm also confident that any of you, I'm sure I could sit down and have conversations with you, that any of you could look back over your life and you can likely point to a person somewhere along the line that showed up for you, showed up in your life, valued you, and helped shape who you are today. And maybe you're a follower of Jesus because of that. Maybe you're in this church because of that, because someone showed up for you. But even I don't know where you're at with Jesus, but set that aside for a second. You may be in your career. You may be following your passions and in your hobbies and in your specific location physically or geographical location because someone showed up in your life. And I want you guys to talk about it. You've had multiple weeks off, so there's no complaining I get from you guys that now I'm going to make you guys talk, okay? Something we do from time to time around here is I'll put up a question, you guys interact, turn around, hop across the aisle, whatever it may be, and I want you guys to interact on this question. Oh, there's Joel. I found him. Sorry. My slides are out of order. That's probably my bad. That's Joel. There we go. I want you to interact on this question. How did someone show up for you? They're going to put some music on. If you don't want to interact, just give them that eye. We all know what that means. Don't talk to those people. But for the rest of us, take just a minute. How did someone show up for you? All right, wrap those thoughts up. We'll finish here. All right, I hope that as you shared stories, as you discussed, something that popped out at you, no matter where you're at, that I hope you never discount the impact one person can have on another person. And maybe you heard just a story for a moment there. That was really helpful. Now I want you to hold on to that idea, hold on to that thought, hold on to that feeling for just a moment because we're going to come back to it in a little bit. But for the first time, really in modern recorded history, we have 6 generations living at the same time, bordering on 7 generations living at the exact same time. And people live longer and kind of due to medical things. And so we have a lot of generations living together. And so I want to give you just kind of a breakdown. Some of these numbers are, as far as like the dates, they can be kind of gray on the ends. But we're going all the way back to the silent generation. Any silent generation in here? 25 to 45 born. Anybody in here? I see you, Billy. I see that hand back there. We've got a couple that are from there. That's way back in the day. Love you guys. That was a long time ago, okay? But the next generation that came in is the baby boomers. That's about 46 to 64. Any baby boomers in the room? Okay, several of you. People came home from war, birds and bees. You guys get it. Lots of kids. Okay, that's what happened there. Then we move on to the next generation. They have kids, 65 to 79, Gen X or the baby busters. And they're called baby busters because of whether it be Roe v. Wade or the availability of the pill. We didn't have a boom in children. We actually had a shrinking of a generation. So the baby busters from there. Now, millennials. Any millennials in the room? Okay, those are my people. That's me. I was born in 88, right in the heart of it, 1980 to 94. Next is Gen Z, which is 95 to 2012. Anybody? Hey, nice. Stand up. That's what you expect from these guys, you know. Loud and proud. I like it. 95 to 2012, and now what's been called Generation Alpha, 2013 and on. And these are the kids that are kind of up in our Kid Story area right now, most likely. Now, if I could take a guess, for many of the older generations in the room, and I can put myself in there now, I'm 34, so the millennials are aging. Unfortunately, I feel it in my back. I feel it. We're aging, okay? But for many of the older generations, it is easy to look at like these last 2 or even last few and just say, if we can get them acting like these other generations, we'll get this country back on track, right? We'll be able to sort out all these issues if we can just get these other generations start acting like the ones before them. Have you ever heard that before? Like, I work with young people, and so a lot of people talk to me about young people, and you wouldn't believe some of the complaints that I hear about these younger generations, and complaints about millennials, which I understand. I hear you. But I hear from a lot of older generations about this very idea. Side note, some older generations, whether it be my parents or even older, they are quick to look at the younger and say they're the problem. They're the ones that need to sort stuff out, while simultaneously blaming those in office, which are very young. Those in office are very young, right? No, so it's. Can we just admit we're all part of the problem here? We're all part of the problem and all part of the solution, in a sense. I told Dennis, he's 75, and when he retires here, I said, Dennis, you can go and run for president. So apparently that's what we're doing now. But what I'm saying is that we have to stop looking at the younger generations as the problem and actually start to see them as a solution or the solution to a lot of what we're seeing in our world. Which means we're going to have to go out of our way as older generations to empower these younger generations and encourage them. And I think that in the church we sometimes forget that we're one generation away from losing everything we've given our lives for and everything Jesus gave his life for. Now, I know that the Holy Spirit can work in the midst of our misrepresentation of things, but that doesn't let us off the hook. And it is imperative that each generation makes the handoff to the next. Anyone younger. It doesn't necessarily have to be just to Gen Alpha or Gen Z or anything. It is imperative that one generation make the handoff to the next. And where that handoff fails, we all fail. Not just a news story, but when we talk about this, we're talking capital C church, the church across the globe, across the city. This is imperative for all of us. And I want to show you that it's not just important to us at New Story or even important to the modern church, but actually it's important to God who gave us some very clear instructions on this. So I want you to grab your Bibles, turn to Psalm 78. Psalm 78. It's page 472 in those hardback black Bibles. I've talked through this passage before with you guys, but I think it's important that we're reminded of this. Those hardback black Bibles, if you don't have a Bible at home, please take that. That's our gift to you. We want you to be able to have the Bible at home. But if it's just going to, collect dust in your car, maybe don't. Maybe just leave it there. But if you're going to take it home and use it, take it. Be great. Psalm 78. That's where we're going to be. Now, the Psalms, if you're unfamiliar, they're basically the very first hymnal. It's a collection of poetry that's often put to song. Is what the Psalms are. And they're from a number of different authors. Authors that you, whether you grew up in church or not, you've probably heard of. You've heard of David, like King David. David and Goliath David. He wrote a majority, 73 of these 150 Psalms we have. Moses, maybe another name that you recognize, he wrote one. Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, the wisest man who ever lived. You know that you've heard about him, likely if you've been in church. He wrote several. And then we also have a number of these written from people that you won't know. I assume that no one is a scholar in the descendants of Korah. Anybody? No, but they wrote several of our Psalms, and a guy named Asaph wrote several, which again, you probably don't recognize. But Psalm 78 that we're going to be looking at is a letter of poetry written by this guy named Asaph, who was a contemporary with David. He lived at the same time as David did. And so he writes this in verse 1. I'll read the first 4 verses for us. Psalm 78, 1 through 4. My people, hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. He's talking to Israel here. He says, I will open my mouth with a parable. I'll utter hidden sayings, things from of old. Here's the key, verse 3. Things that we have heard and known. Things our ancestors have told us. Verse 4. We will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power, and the wonders he's done. He's saying that he doesn't want future generations to be unaware of what God has done and what God has promised to do through Jesus. Now, at this point, for them, Jesus is still future. Jesus hasn't come yet. And so there's promises that God has made. He's like, I don't want this next generation to be unaware of that. I want them to understand and know clearly what God is going to do. And in verse 3 and 4, we actually see kind of a natural progression of how this is supposed to go. We have our ancestors. They heard it. Who's that to us? That's our parents, right? Our grandparents. And they've told us we'll not hide them from their descendants. Our ancestors were their descendants. That's us. We'll tell the next generation, that's our kids, the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power and the wonders He has done. So we see this natural progression. You keep going on down the line. Look at verse 5 and 6. We'll keep reading. Verse 5, He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which He commanded our ancestors to teach their children. Why? So the next generation would know them. Even the children yet to be born. And they, in turn, would tell their children. So again, we see it going down the line. Why is He harping on this? Why is this so important? Look at verse 7. This is why. Then they would put their trust in God and not forget His deeds, but would keep His commands. For they would be like their ancestors, a stubborn and rebellious generation whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to Him. What's the point He's making here for us? It's that whatever generation you're in, you are the primary way God will use to continue making Himself known to the next generation. It's you. It's me. He could have said, you know what? Actually, scratch that. Every 10 years, we're going to do this Red Sea event. I'm going to create a dry path from New York to Europe, and so you all can walk across dry land, and you'll be like, oh man, He's the Lord, and we'll be able to see that. And every 10 years, the Lord's going to do that. But He didn't. He says one generation is going to be responsible for telling the next generation, and so on. He says that is your responsibility, so that they would trust Him and not forget His goodness. It is something we see not just back then, but we see in the early church. If you go read the early chapters of Acts, that's what we see. We just did a study in that. That's what we see happening, is them telling the younger generations. In Titus, write that down. Go read Titus 2, the first early verses of that. Paul is saying, hey, in your church, the older generation needs to instruct the younger generation. So this is something we see throughout the Scripture. It's something they were responsible for then, and we are still responsible for today, all of us today. Now, this command here, this is not a get the kids out of the house and I've done my part type thing. This is not a I don't have kids so I don't have to do this yet type of thing. This is not I get to retirement and I can finally be done type of thing. In fact, if anything, if you get to that age, you have a bigger job now because there's more generations below you. This is a church-wide responsibility that we have. Now, how we do this is very simple. And I'm going to boil it down to one thing, so as you leave here, it should be no question what the one thing is you need to take away. And it's that thing we talked about at the beginning. Here's how you can make a lasting difference in the generations that are coming after you. Show up. That's it. Just show up. Now, there's probably 100 different ways that you can apply this. But the concept itself is simple. We know this to be true in a bunch of other areas of our lives, like we're a results-driven type people, where we know that if we do certain things, we get a certain result. For example, if you don't go to the gym, you can't expect the gains. Like abs do not cut themselves. You have to work for that. You don't go to school, you don't show up at school, you don't get that diploma. You don't show up for work, you can't expect that paycheck. I'm looking at you, Chris Jones. You don't show up for the next generation, you can't expect them to be in the church. But don't miss this, because this is a key part of this. Is my influence and your influence with anyone isn't just granted to you. It's not just given to you. And if we're not careful, we can often think that influence comes from power, status, or success. We think that we are just granted influence to this next generation because we're a parent, because we are a teacher, because I'm a pastor, because you're an elder in their life. We can often think that grants us instant influence for people. Now, there are times where, yes, you can have influence in somebody's life because of power and authority, yes, but more often than not, you know this to be true, influence is earned. Think of who you allow to have say in your life. Who do you allow to have influence in your life? Maybe it's friends, maybe it's family, maybe it's trusted adults, I don't know who it is. But I'm confident that you can point to, with those people, you can point to a reason as to why that is the case. You can point to a reason why they have earned that in your life. This is an influence. What we're talking about is an influence based on trust. And as a church leader, I often stand on stages and I teach and instruct and different things like that. And if I'm not careful, I can begin to believe that what happens on the stage is the most important part of my ministry, but I know that's not true. Because you know as much as I do that I can stand up here and yell till I'm blue in the face, and y'all can walk out that door and be like, he was loud today, and miss everything else, because you've probably done it. Why does that happen? Because relationship and trust matter so much more than words coming out of my mouth. And with any generation, especially our younger ones now that are very relationally oriented, don't miss this. They need to know that you care before they care at all what you have to say. They need to know that you care before they care at all what you have to say. We get that backwards. Like, you need to listen to what I'm saying, and you need to care about it. And they're like, nah, I'm not about that. I need to know you actually care about me before I listen to any of that nonsense. And what I'll tell you is that if you want to have influence on any generation, at pointing them towards Jesus, which I hope if you're a follower of Jesus, that is what you want. If you want to have any influence in kind of the spiritual direction of a generation, you have to earn this type of influence. And to do this, to earn this, you're going to have to show up. When we show up, we're basically doing what we're doing is growing in this thing called empathy. It is empathy. If you're unclear, I'll just define it really simply. Empathy is the ability to press pause on your own thoughts and feelings long enough to explore someone else's thoughts and feelings. It is extremely easy for us as older generations, including myself in this, to look at younger generations at their stage in life and now begin to make assumptions about why they act the way they act. Or we begin to make assumptions on how they're feeling or what they're feeling. We make all these assumptions about them. And listen, you know what assuming does. I'm not going to say it here, but what I can tell you it doesn't do is it doesn't help us tell the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord. And for me, and for many of us, God love us, we're not good at this with the younger generation. But I need them to know certain things. I need to tell them. I need to truth bomb them because they just need to hear it. But they need to know you care before they care what you have to say. So we have to press pause on our own thoughts and feelings long enough to explore theirs. And what I can promise you is that as you do this, and the more immediate, when you show up for others, it will change you more than it will change them. Especially in the immediate. It's going to change you more than it changes them. Your life will be better spent. And you'll feel more fulfilled in your life when you show up for other people. When you leverage your experience, your knowledge, your lessons learned from mistakes, you can help influence a generation, help point them towards Jesus. I share a lot of personal stories in students. And most of them are because I've learned the hard way of what not to do. You don't skate on private property or you'll end up in the back of a cop car and they take you home. Or downtown, one of the two. I tell personal stories all the time so they know what not to do. And you have that ability too. Now you're probably thinking, Jeremy, you're making this sound way too simple. Way too easy, because it is really hard to tell. And if you've been around kids or if you've had kids or anything like that, it is hard to tell at times if you're making any sort of impact, if at all. Tell me, you know this to be true. Tell me if this sounds familiar. If any of you work with younger kids or had younger kids or work with kindergartners, for example, when is the last time maybe you worked with a kindergartner and you taught and you just poured your heart out to them and they came up afterwards and they said, I understand joy and suffering so much better as a result of your teaching. Thank you. Thank you. Haven't heard that? I work with middle schoolers. I've never had a middle school boy come up to me after we taught or talked about something, and he said, through tears, "What you taught today is going to make me a better husband and father. Thank you." Never had a middle school boy say that to me. Mostly it's fart and walk away. That's usually what I hear. And I'm like, "Lord, please, let this land at least a little bit. Or they're never going to get a girlfriend doing that." Listen, the results may not be immediate, guys. And you may not know the impact of showing up for decades. But what this generation needs is a church of people who are willing to sit down with them and listen to their questions. Not be afraid of their questions either, but listen to them. What this generation needs is a church of people who are willing to build relationships. What this generation needs is a church of people who are willing to ask questions to them and really listen. And I'm thankful that we have several people in our church that do that on a regular basis. We do just that, because they value the next generation. They show up on a regular basis. I'm going to highlight a few of them, okay? In New Story students, for example, we have Whitney McCubbin, Joel Ulrich, Sean Connor, Linnell Wilson, I spelled her name wrong, Wilson, Kristen Maxwell, and others that pop in and out. They show up every Wednesday night, and sometimes they come to a lock-in for 12 hours because they know the value of showing up for the next generation. In Power Up, in Kids Story, our older kids in Kids Story, we have Jen Dickinson and Mike Dickinson and Pam Carroll and Scott Hughes and Carmen Johnson and Daniel Johnson and Matthew Panjada, and I'm sorry if I'm leaving any names out. I tried to get all of them. They're showing up week after week after week to invest in this younger generation because they know if they don't show up, we're one generation away from losing. And our younger kids in Small Wonders, we have Jen Grayson and Dora Gregory and Susie Foster and Jacqueline Reese and Josh Van Zyl and Terry Manley and Jeannie Scott. And we have others that are on retainer for that. We even have some of our young teenagers that are starting now to serve in those areas because they want to tell the coming generation. I show you these because there are clear and easy ways here to show up for the younger generation. Maybe it is serving in Kids Story. Maybe it is serving in students. Clear and easy ways. But inside this house is not the only place to do that. You can show up in other ways. You want some help? I'll give you a few examples. These are ways you can show up. I want you to write these down, maybe take a picture of them, something. Ways that you can show up for the next generation. Go to their games. Go to their games. Go to their plays. Listen, in my years of ministry, I've been to a lot of good plays, and I've been to a lot of other plays. But I'm going to keep going. Because every time, the smile on those students' face when they see me either in the audience or afterwards, I know that showing up for them allows me to have some sort of influence in their life and pointing them towards Jesus. Go to their birthday parties. Well, don't be a creep. If they invite you, go. Don't just pop in. There is a hard line here, okay? Send them a card. Send them a text if you have their number. Talk to them. Go up and just talk to them. Ask them questions. Show interest in what they're interested in. I can't tell you how many conversations about stuff that I have that I really don't care. But I know it matters to them, and so I'm going to listen. I'm going to talk to them. Because the hope is somebody would do that for me as I talk about Formula One and cornhole and all these different things that I do, the hobbies that I have. My hope is that somebody will maybe listen to me too. So right now, I want to ask you to take this somewhat seriously. In your program on the back, I want you to pull out a pen. And on just kind of, you can draw, or you don't have to draw anything. You just write a name of someone who showed up for you. That person you talked about earlier. The person who showed up for you. Someone that helped shape who you are today. Who showed up for you? For me, it was my youth pastor. I didn't start following Jesus really until the summer before my junior year of high school. And I was a skater punk kid that he chose to actually invest in. And his name was Mike Myers, and it's not the Friday the 13th Mike Myers. He wasn't a killer. He also wasn't a international man of mystery like Mike Myers, you understand. But he was just a normal youth pastor that showed up for me. I want you to write that name down. And below, draw a line, and below that, who showed up for you? I want you to write below who you're going to show up for. Name a person you are going to show up for. And maybe they don't have a name. Because maybe you're realizing, I'm not making it a point to invest in a younger generation right now. And maybe this is revealing for you, and that's a good thing. So maybe for you it just needs to be a more general idea. I'm going to show up for teenagers. I'm going to show up for kids. I'm going to show up, just an idea. If they have a name, that's awesome. Here's why this matters. Here's why I'm asking you to do this. Write down someone who showed up for you. You know the impact they had. And then look at that other name and know the impact that you could potentially have on that person or that group. And I encourage you, if it is just a group, try to put a name to that group. Go out of your way to invest in this younger generation in some way. And this matters because we are not going to accidentally influence the next generation. We're not going to accidentally see this generation turn and begin to follow Jesus. We're not going to accidentally see this church grow, for example. We have to be intentional and we have to show up. In the church, guys, like I said at the beginning, we are one generation away from losing everything we've given our lives for and everything Jesus gave his life for. Yes, the Holy Spirit can work in the midst of us, but don't let that be a cop-out for you. We are committing suicide as a church to ignore this generation. And what that tells us, what I think that even says to Jesus is, I'm okay. I don't want to show up for them. I don't want to invest in the next generation. And I'm okay with the church ending with me. Because I'm too comfortable with my traditions, with my way of life. And I'm just going to wait, even so come Lord Jesus, take me back. See, what we see modeled for us in the life of Jesus is this right here. He protected the next generation. He empowered the next generation. He gave voice to the next generation. He honored the next generation. He celebrated the next generation. He taught the next generation. And he even spoke of the next generation as examples to follow for all of us. So now, this is our turn. It's our turn to do this. Now, I'll close with something that I posted on my socials, I think it was last year, but it's something that's really near and dear to my heart that I just want to share with any Gen Z in the room or anyone watching. And I know I'm an old millennial, I'm old and crusty, but hear me out for just a second. I want you guys to know just how important you really are. How valuable your life is. This may not be your belief. I don't know where you're all at. But I believe you are created by a loving Father with dignity, value, and worth. And those things are not based on your follower count. Your value is not based on how well you do in school. Your dignity is not based on what other people think of you or how they treat you. Your worth is not based on how proud you make your parents. Just you, as you are important and valued, and I want you to know that first and foremost, that no matter how you identify your color, your gender, first of all, I want you to know that you're loved. And I know that as you look around yourself and in your world, and you experience difficult things, the effects of violence and drug use and broken relationships and divorce, doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of hope in this world right now for your future. I hear you and I feel you in that. Listen, I haven't always been a giant, okay? I was a scrawny little nerd for a very long time, and I was bullied really roughly all the way through school until I got taller than all of them my senior year. I know the fears of not wanting to go to school because I knew who I would have to face when I got there. Or taking a few bus stops later so I didn't have to get off with those people and now I have to walk a mile and a half back home because I know what's going to happen if I get off here. I know that feeling. I know the feeling of wanting it all just to go away and for all of it to just end. And you're likely no stranger to that either, and so I just want you to know you're not alone. So as you're going into and you've already started this new school year with new beginnings and new things, it's exciting and scary. I just want you to remember this, that you're loved, that you're valuable, that you matter. Don't let the voices in your head or anyone else try to take that from you. Because Gen Z, Generation Alpha, you guys are worth my time, and I hope that I can continually show that to you by showing up for you. And this is what we believe as a church. And I hope that's true. That you are worth our time, and we want to continually show that to you by showing up for you. We love you, and we're glad that you are here in the space and here on this earth. Church, we can't expect to have influence and in the spiritual direction of this generation if we're not willing to even take the first step and just show up. So whatever you wrote down there on that paper, maybe you wrote down nothing. Maybe that's something to look at too. Like, no, I'm just defiant and I'm not going to write it down because Jeremy told me to and I don't like people telling me what to do. There's something else to talk about there. But I want to encourage you, so as much as I have the ability to here, show up for them because they matter. And when we don't, think about what that communicates to them. Let me pray for us.